When you look in a mirror, what do you see? Chances are, you don't see a supermodel looking back at you. Images of beautiful people surround us and make the rest of us feel inadequate. For both women and men, the desire to have a better body is intense. But if you're overweight, a shapely body can be an elusive goal. And if you're obese, diet and exercise sometimes deliver only marginal success. For these people, surgery becomes a last desperate option to fit into a society where beauty is sacred.
My God, you turn on the TV and the beautiful people are marching at you all the time. And at what point do you say, okay, not everybody's supposed to look perfect naked, but what is perfect or what is good enough?
Brad Ryan is 27 and lives in Denver, Colorado. He has struggled with obesity for most of his life.
When I look in the mirror, I just see fat. I see saggy, grossness.
Brad has seen this image staring back at him for as long as he can remember. His battle with weight began early in life.
You know, in elementary, you know, you have to wear the husky pants.
His friends and family remember his life.
Growing up in the same neighborhood as him and seeing him through the years, he was always a little overweight, a little bigger, and had a healthy appetite. And that was Brad.
I just remember looking at him in the second grade and looking over at him, and I saw this picture in my head, and he had this little belly, you know, and I just remember, God, my brother's getting fat, you know? But everybody always thought that he would grow out of it, and he just never did.
As Brad's weight grew, it began to affect his self-image. He felt uncomfortable around other kids.
A vivid memory of elementary school was having a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances, but no real close friends. And I look back on that now and I wish I had more closer friends.
At home, food was a natural part of family life.
With a lot of families, and ours is no different, it was, you get good grades, well, you go out to eat. It seemed that food always had this positive reinforcement to it. Do good here, we'll go out to eat and celebrate.
Brad began to eat more to fill the emptiness left by other things missing in his young life.
Food was positive reinforcement, it was love.
Brad's parents knew he was gaining weight, but they never thought it would get out of control.
I mean, he just didn't gain 50 pounds overnight. It was over a long period of time. So you just didn't pay as much attention to it, or you try to, you know, maybe being his parents, we should have changed his eating habits. I don't know, but it's just like I was waiting for him to get taller because I thought he would eventually grow into his size.
Brad stopped growing taller, but he continued to gain weight. By the time he turned 13 in 1988, he weighed 200 pounds, well above the normal weight for his age. His size made him feel different from his classmates.
I was definitely aware because, you know, people in elementary school and kids in junior high, they're not kind to stuff like that.
Over the years, Brad continued to pile on the weight. In high school, he reached 280 pounds.
I think any high school male, you know, going through the changes that you're going through, there's some self-esteem issues, and me being where I was and being, you know, so much fatter than the other kids, probably wasn't good self-esteem, I would imagine.
Brad's high school classmates remember how he tried to deflect attention away from his body.
I remember him as being very outgoing and funny.
When you're funny, it doesn't matter what you look like, you know, because, you know, if you can make people laugh, they're going to accept you no matter what.
I think that's where my sense of humor got developed. I'd rather break the ice with a joke and take the attention away from myself and more towards my personality. It was definitely a struggle. Definitely a struggle.
While Brad struggled to hide his feelings from his friends, at home things were different. Brad's twin sister Brenda remembers how he acted around the family.
He was very hateful and spiteful. He used to do stuff just to get on my nerves, just like any other kid. And I would say mean things to him, like call him fat. And I wasn't very nice to him. We weren't nice to each other at all.
Oh, he's just a grouch. I mean, you couldn't even talk to him. I mean, you couldn't reason with him. You couldn't. Real short all the time. Brad's family tried to help him lose weight. His parents put him on his first diet in 1987.
And I remember being, 12 years old and going to Weight Watchers. And That wasn't necessarily a self-esteem booster, because you know, you're like in 6th grade, 7th grade, you're different from all your classmates.
2 years later, his mom and dad enrolled him in another weight loss program.
We put him into Kaiser's weight loss, the young adult type program. We would drive him out there, and they were trying to teach him to eat better and also to get more exercise.
Ultimately, Brad fails to stick to any of the diets. He occasionally loses weight, but not his appetite.
Whenever you went out to eat, it was definitely get the appetizer, and definitely get the salad, and definitely get the meal, and definitely get the dessert.
He was the guy that we were out on the 4-wheel drive adventure up the hills, and somebody had a cooler. And Brad would dip into the cooler and eat everyone's food, and that would be Brad.
Brad's eating habits continue to get worse. As his weight climbs, his closest friends begin to worry about his health.
We both did the up and down weight problem that most people do who have weight issues. They lose weight and gain it back, and usually when they gain it back, they gain extra. And then they lose a little bit and come back up, and it just kind of keeps going up and up. And Brad was a lot heavier than he was, about 100 pounds heavier than I am. And so he was just getting to the point where it was getting dangerous.
By 2000, Brad exceeds 300 pounds. He is 25 years old. At more than 100 pounds above his ideal weight, Brad becomes part of a national epidemic. He joins the more than 60 million adults in America who are clinically obese. Without drastic weight reduction, Brad faces an increased risk of conditions like heart disease and stroke, even death. And yet, despite the serious risk to Brad's health, other factors weigh more heavily on his mind.
The way society views an obese person, you know, you're viewed as lazy and disgusting. You know, get away from me, you're fat. And if nobody else accepts you, how can you have pride in yourself? How can you say, I'm worth it, when you're constantly, you know, being suggested that you're not?
In 2002, Brad reaches 330 pounds, his highest weight.
Oh, it was definitely the lowest point in my life. I'd sleep in my bed or just lay in my bed. Didn't want to get out. I hated being in public, you know. I'd do all my grocery shopping in the middle of the night because I didn't want to deal with people.
He was so heavy, so unhappy. He had tried, you know, the normal routes to lose weight and didn't really have any impact. So, yeah, I was really afraid that he was going to try to hurt himself, even possibly suicidal.
All of a sudden, I started this like roll of depression. And then we all know what depression leads to for obese people. It's overeating, because that's where you're getting your love.
Brad begins to fear that food might provide the only love in his life.
I was definitely motivated on the fact that not only the way people perceive me, but to take that one step further, how females perceive me. And to look at how many relationships I've actually been in at 27, not many. Even though I feel I have a lot to offer, let's face it, your looks are your first impression.
With most women, Brad was always the best friend, but never the boyfriend.
But he was the type of guy that you wouldn't like go on a date with or like go out with. You know, he was just like your friend. He was like that guy you always want to hang out with and like call with problems. He was like that really, really good friend that you always wanted to hang out with.
At that time, he wasn't really comfortable talking with women. He was extroverted around all the guys, you know, and amongst a group of women, he was comfortable, but one-on-one with a woman, he was not comfortable at all.
The fear of being alone, that he may never have an intimate relationship, becomes a major turning point for Brad.
People would say to me, you know, do you really want a girl who would want you just for your body and whatever else you have to offer? If I can at least get in there with that first impression of a person who may come across as somewhat, you know, this person has a lot to offer. I don't think anybody looks at someone at 330 pounds and think they have anything to offer, other than somebody to go to the diner with.
Desperate to lose the weight, Brad decides to take a drastic step to finally change the course of his life. He joins the growing number of obese Americans who feel they have no other options and turns to surgery. Brad decides to get a gastric bypass, the same decision made by thousands of morbidly obese people every year in the United States.
Here's a diet you can't turn off. It addresses portion controls, addresses sugar intake, it was definitely the right decision for me. Is it the right decision for everybody? Probably not. But for me, it's almost like antabuse for an alcoholic.
The gastric bypass surgically reduces the size of the stomach by 90%. Doctors separate the stomach into two parts. The upper part forms a small pouch the size of an egg. Food then bypasses the lower stomach and the first part of the small intestine.
Hi, Brad.
Brad has to meet strict guidelines to qualify for the procedure.
Your pulse rate's good. It's in the 80s.
It's major surgery, and it has potential complications.
What kind of grubs come in, you know?
Gastric bypass patients must also make permanent lifestyle changes. Brad can't have sugar or drink alcohol, and because he has permanently reduced the size of his stomach, he must eat his meals in very small portions.
Do we have napkins anywhere?
The surgery works for Brad. By February of 2003, he loses 130 pounds, just 15 pounds shy of his goal. But instead of finally feeling good about himself, Brad only feels disappointed. His rapid weight loss leaves him with an embarrassing but common side effect: handfuls of sagging skin. After years of obesity, his skin has stretched too far for too long, and it will not shrink back on its own.
I thought that after I lost all the weight that, you know, life would be, you know, a lot different than what it was.
Frustrated and desperate once again, Brad searches for a solution to get rid of the skin and transform his body into a more attractive shape.
It's really hard when you achieved the dramatic weight loss that I have, but look in the mirror and that's all you still see fat. I've lost 130 pounds, but I still see fat. Or I still see, you know, my stomach's not flat, come on. It's like, how much more of ass busting do I need to do? How much more?
Can any amount of diet and exercise reduce the excess skin around Brad's waist? What will it take for him to see himself as anything other than obese?